The sky over the small town of Redwood was turning a heavy gray as the afternoon wore on. The streets were relatively empty, as if the looming rain had warned people it was better to stay inside. It wasn't a particularly memorable day, but for Ryan Carter, the shift at the police station was about to take an unexpected turn. At 27 years old, Ryan had served as an officer for 5 years, driven by a mix of determination and, at times, a hint of arrogance. He had grown up in the suburbs, in a middle-class home, where racial tensions were part of the daily background noise. Almost imperceptible, but always present. Ryan carried a certain air of self-assurance, a product of his youth and early success on the force. He was tall, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes that could freeze anyone who didn't know his softer side. But there was a shadow within him, a doubt he couldn't quite name, that sometimes led him to act with unnecessary harshness. And on that day, that shadow pulled him toward a young man walking in the east side of town, a neighborhood known for its predominantly Hispanic population. The sky over the small town of Hawthorn was growing heavy and gray as the afternoon wore on. The streets were mostly deserted, as if the looming storm had given people fair warning to stay indoors. It wasn't a particularly memorable day, but for Sean McKinley, a shift at the station was about to take an unexpected turn. At 25, Shawn had been a police officer for 3 years, driven by determination and, at times, a touch of arrogance. Raised in the suburban middle class, he had grown up with racial tensions simmering under the surface, barely noticeable but ever present. Shawn carried himself with a sense of self-assurance, a product of his youth and early successes in law enforcement. Tall, with short blonde hair and piercing blue eyes that could intimidate anyone unfamiliar with his softer side, he sometimes displayed an unnecessary harshness, a shadow of doubt inside him that he couldn't quite define. On this day, that shadow led him toward a young man walking in the southern part of town, a neighborhood known for its predominantly African-American community. Marcus was a 33-year-old man with a sturdy build and a calm demeanor. He had worked hard to get where he was and wasn't easily intimidated. His dark skin gleamed under the moist air, and his features showed a blend of pride and humility, as though each step he took reminded him of the struggles he had overcome to become who he was. Marcus had grown up in a Catholic church, where his devout mother raised him under the principles of faith and justice. From a young age, he had learned that a man's dignity wasn't defined by his skin color, but by how he faced adversity. As Marcus walked, dressed in a dark suit that accentuated his elegance, he noticed a police car creeping down the street. The silent yet suggestive sound of the siren made him glance over in curiosity and caution. Shawn, behind the wheel, watched Marcus with calculating eyes. For Shawn, the mere sight of a well-dressed black man walking in that neighborhood was reason enough to investigate. "Hey you! Where do you think you're going?" Shawn called out as he approached. Marcus stopped, surprised by the aggressive tone but remained calm, knowing any wrong move could be misinterpreted. "Good afternoon, officer. I'm heading to a meeting," he responded politely, though a flash of annoyance crossed his eyes. Shawn stepped out of the car, approaching Marcus with his boots echoing on the wet pavement. The height difference between them was apparent, but the perceived power gap was even greater. Shawn looked Marcus up and down, examining his suit, his watch, and finally his face, as though searching for some sign of guilt. "A meeting, huh? What kind of meeting would that be? You don't seem like you're from around here." Marcus took a deep breath, controlling the anger that began to simmer inside him. This wasn't the first time he had been stopped without cause, but something about today felt different, like things could escalate quickly. "It's a business meeting, officer. I don't see why I need to be detained for that." Shawn let out a short, humorless laugh that echoed off the surrounding buildings. "Work, right? I know how that goes. Show me some ID and quick." Marcus nodded slowly, retrieving his wallet with deliberately slow movements, careful not to give Shawn any reason to act against him. He handed over his ID, watching as Shawn inspected it with disdain. "Marcus Parker, huh?" Shawn muttered. "And where did you say you worked?" Before Marcus could answer, a voice crackled through Shawn's radio, interrupting the tense moment. It was an urgent call from the station, requesting all officers back immediately for something important. With a dismissive gesture, Shawn tossed Marcus's ID back to him. "Get out of here before I change my mind," Shawn said, turning and heading back to his car. Marcus picked up his ID from the ground, keeping his expression neutral, though inside he felt the sting of humiliation. Instead of responding with sarcasm or anger, he turned and continued on his way. He knew that true justice would come soon enough. The following morning, the station buzzed with palpable tension. Rumors flew among the officers. Something big was happening. Shawn arrived to furtive glances from his colleagues, whispers floating just out of earshot. His boss, Captain Davies, a middle-aged man with graying beard and a gravelly voice, had been uncharacteristically reserved in recent days, and the reason for his behavior was about to become clear. "Attention, officers! Gather in the conference room," Captain Davies ordered. His voice firm but not raised, leaving no room for argument. Shawn followed his fellow officers into the room, a faint tingling at the back of his neck. He hadn't done anything out of the ordinary, except for the incident with the black man on the south side of town, but that was nothing new. Encounters like that were part of the job, especially in a town like Hawthorn. Once everyone had gathered, Captain Davies cleared his throat to get their attention. "I want you all to know that today, we're welcoming a new chief of police," he announced, letting the news sink in. The tension in the room grew thicker. "He's someone who's worked hard to get here, and I have no doubt he's going to bring some significant changes to our department. So, I expect all of you to show him the respect he deserves." The murmurs intensified. A new chief meant changes. For some, that wasn't necessarily a good thing. Shawn, in particular, felt uneasy. His position on the team was solid, but a new chief could shake that stability. The door to the room finally opened, and in walked the new police chief. The whispers fell silent. All eyes turned to the figure striding confidently toward the front. It was Marcus Parker, dressed in the same impeccably dark suit Shawn had seen the day before. Shawn's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to a mixture of fear and shame. Marcus reached the front of the room, his gaze sweeping over the officers who were staring at him with a blend of surprise and respect. When his eyes met Shawn's, Marcus maintained his composure, though a slight smile played at the corner of his lips. "Good morning, gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice steady. "I'm Marcus Parker, and as of today, I'll be your new chief of police. I know some of you may already know me, and I hope in time, I'll get to know each of you." The atmosphere in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Shawn stood frozen, struggling to process what was happening. His mind raced, replaying every detail of his encounter with Marcus the previous day. He felt trapped, unsure of how to navigate the situation he had put himself in. Marcus continued speaking with calm authority, laying out his vision for the department and his plans to improve relations with the community. As he spoke, he didn't miss the expression on Shawn's face, a man who now understood the weight of his actions. But Marcus wasn't a vengeful man. His mother had always taught him that true strength lies in compassion and the ability to forgive.